When the fourth teacher walked to the witness stand carrying a 3-inch binder with my name on it, I watched my ex-wife's face drain of color. Her lawyer stopped shuffling papers. The courtroom went silent except for the sound of binder rings opening. Welcome to Cheating Story Exposed. Real stories, real justice, no sugarcoating. You know what? I notice many of you watching haven't hit that subscribe button yet. Here's the thing, we drop stories like this every single day. Stories about people who got played, got smart, and got even. If you want to see how these situations really end, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. My name is Ryan Mitchell, and 6 months ago I sat in family court listening to the mother of my children commit perjury. Not small lies, not exaggerations, complete fabrications about my involvement in our kids' lives. She told the judge under oath that I was essentially a stranger to my own children's education, that I'd never helped with homework, never communicated with teachers, never showed up for parent conferences. She painted me as a man who provided money but nothing else, a ghost in my own kids' lives. The only problem with her testimony, I had 4 years of documentation proving otherwise, and I'd brought the witnesses to prove it, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to where this actually started because the courtroom was just where it ended. The real story began 2 years earlier, in the kitchen of the home I thought we'd grow old in together. I'm a project manager for a commercial construction firm. The work is demanding, the hours can be long, but I've always made my family the priority. We have 2 kids, Nathan, who's 11 now, and Olivia, who's 9. From the day each of them was born, I was hands-on. Diaper changes, midnight feedings, reading bedtime stories, the whole deal. As they got older and school became central to their lives, I stayed involved. I helped with homework every night I was home. I attended parent-teacher conferences. I volunteered for field trip chaperoning when my schedule allowed. My ex-wife, Monica, was a pharmaceutical sales rep. Good career, flexible schedule, and she was home more often than I was. On paper, we had a solid partnership. We split parenting duties based on our schedules. We communicated well about the kids. At least I thought we did. The cracks started showing about 2 years ago. Monica became distant. She was on her phone constantly, smiling at the screen in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. She started working late more frequently, started taking weekend trips for regional sales conferences, started suggesting I take the kids to my parents' place so she could have time to herself. I'm not an idiot. I recognized the signs. But I also believe in communication and trust, so I asked her directly if something was wrong. She denied it. Said she was stressed about work, about meeting her sales targets, about the pressure from her manager. She turned it around on me actually, suggesting that my questioning her meant I didn't trust her, that I was being controlling, so I backed off. I focused on the kids. I made sure they felt stable and loved even as I watched my marriage deteriorate in slow motion. Nathan was transitioning to middle school, which came with its own challenges. Olivia was dealing with some friendship drama in 4th grade. They needed at least one parent who was present and focused, so I made sure that was me. I continued my routine. Every evening when I got home from work, before I even changed out of my work clothes, I'd sit with the kids at the kitchen table and go through their homework. Math problems with Nathan, spelling words with Olivia, reading comprehension passages with both of them. When they had projects due, we'd work on them together. Building the solar system model, creating the California mission diorama, researching famous inventors. Whenever there were issues at school, I emailed the teachers directly. Mrs. Patterson, Nathan's 6th grade English teacher. Mr. Hernandez, his math teacher. Ms. Kim, Olivia's 4th grade teacher. I asked questions about curriculum, about upcoming assignments, about how I could support what they were learning at home. I scheduled parent-teacher conferences and attended every single one, usually without Monica because she was traveling. I didn't do these things because I thought I'd need to prove anything someday. I did them because that's what being a father means. You show up. You stay involved. You make your kids' education a priority. The truth about Monica's affair came out in the most cliché way possible. I got home early from a job site one afternoon. We'd finished pouring a foundation ahead of schedule and found her in our bedroom with her regional sales manager, Derek. She wasn't working late. She wasn't at conferences. She was having an affair with her married boss and apparently had been for over a year. I didn't yell. I didn't break down. I stood in the doorway, looked at both of them, and said 3 words, "Get out now." Derek scrambled for his clothes. Monica started crying, started apologizing, started saying it meant nothing and it was a mistake. I told her we'd talk after the kids were asleep, and I left the room. That evening I sat Nathan and Olivia down and told them that Mom and I were having some problems, but that we both loved them very much and nothing about that would change. I kept my voice steady. I kept my composure. I needed them to feel safe even as their world was about to shift. After they went to bed, Monica and I had the conversation that ended our marriage. She tried to minimize it at first. Said it had only been going on for a few months, that Derek had pursued her, that she'd been planning to end it. All lies, I'd later discover. She'd been seeing him for 15 months. She'd been the one to initiate, and she'd had no plans. To end it, I'd just caught her. I told her I wanted a divorce. She cried harder, begged for another chance, promised it would never happen again. But I was done. The trust was gone. The respect was gone. The marriage was over. We agreed to keep things as civil as possible for the kids' sake. We agreed to co-parent effectively. We agreed to split custody 50-50. I moved into a rental house 10 minutes away so the kids could easily go between homes. I made sure my place had bedrooms set up for each of them, decorated the way they wanted. I maintained their routine, homework help, family dinners on my nights, weekend activities. For about 6 months it worked reasonably well. Monica and I weren't friends, but we communicated about the kids. We coordinated schedules. We both attended Nathan's soccer games and Olivia's dance recitals. The kids adjusted better than I'd expected. They knew both parents loved them and were staying involved. Then Derek's wife found out about the affair and filed for divorce. Suddenly, Derek wasn't just Monica's affair partner, he was her boyfriend openly. She started bringing him around the kids despite our agreement that we'd introduce new partners slowly and carefully. Nathan was uncomfortable with it. Olivia asked me multiple times why Derek was always at Mom's house. I raised the issue with Monica, suggested we stick to our original agreement about new relationships and the kids. She got defensive. Said Derek was going to be a part of her life and the kids needed to accept that. Said I was being jealous and controlling. That's when things got ugly. Monica filed a motion to modify our custody arrangement. She wanted primary custody, with me getting the kids every other weekend. Her reasoning: I worked too much. I was often traveling for work. I couldn't provide the stable environment the kids needed. Derek, conveniently, had just taken a new position with flexible remote work options, so he could be there to help with the kids. When Monica was working, I was stunned. We'd been splitting custody evenly. The kids were doing well. I'd rearranged my entire work schedule to be available for them. And now she wanted to reduce me to every other weekend dad status so she could play house with the man she'd cheated with. I hired an attorney, Richard Lawson, one of the best family law practitioners in the county. He was expensive but came highly recommended. At our first meeting, I laid everything out. The affair, the current custody arrangement, Monica's motion, my involvement in the kids' lives. Richard listened carefully, took notes, and then asked me a crucial question. Do you have documentation of your involvement with the kids? I thought about it. Yes, actually. I had years of emails with their teachers. I had texts and shared calendar entries about school events. I had photos from field trips and school performances. I had homework assignments I'd helped with, saved in a folder on my computer. I'd never thought of it as evidence, just as the normal record of being an active parent. Richard smiled. Start organizing everything. Every email, every text, every phone. We're going to need it. The custody hearing was scheduled for 4 months out. In that time, I did exactly what Richard advised. I went through my email and found hundreds of messages to and from Nathan and Olivia's teachers. Questions about assignments. Concerns about specific challenges they were facing. Thank you notes after conferences. Requests for additional resources to help them at home. I organized them chronologically in binders, one for each child, one for each school year. I documented my attendance at school events. Nathan's soccer games, I'd missed 3 out of 42 over 2 seasons. Olivia's dance recitals, I'd attended every single one. School performances, science fairs, art shows. I had photos, ticket stubs, programs with my name in the thank you section for parent volunteers. I contacted their teachers and asked if they'd be willing to testify about my involvement if needed. Mrs. Patterson, Nathan's English teacher, said absolutely. She remembered me from multiple conferences and from the dozens of emails we'd exchanged about Nathan's reading progress. Mr. Hernandez, Nathan's math teacher, same thing. Ms. Kim, Olivia's current teacher, said she'd be happy to testify. So did Mrs. Reynolds, Olivia's third-grade teacher from the previous year. Meanwhile, Monica was building her case. Her attorney subpoenaed my work records, showing the long hours and occasional overnight travel required by my job. They documented every soccer game I'd missed, every school event that fell on a day I was working. They interviewed Derek, who testified about how present and involved Monica was with the kids, how she prioritized them above everything else. What they didn't have was any documentation of Monica's involvement with the kids' education. No emails with teachers. No evidence of helping with homework. No record of attending parent-teacher conferences. Because the truth was, I'd been handling all of that. Monica showed up for the performances and the games, sure, but the day-to-day educational support, the communication with teachers, the homework help, that was me. Richard warned me that custody battles often come down to who presents better in court, who can paint the more compelling picture. Judges are overworked and often make decisions based on incomplete information. We needed to be prepared for anything. The hearing date arrived. I dressed in my best suit, organized my binders, and drove to the courthouse with Richard. My parents were there for support, sitting quietly in the gallery. Monica arrived with her attorney, a sharp-dressed woman named Patricia Vance who had a reputation for aggressive tactics. Derek was there too, sitting behind Monica, which felt inappropriate given he was a central reason we were in court. The hearing began with opening statements. Patricia painted me as a workaholic father who provided financially, but was emotionally and physically absent from his children's lives. She emphasized my work schedule, my occasional travel, my focus on career advancement. She positioned Monica as the nurturing, present parent who had always put the kids first, who deserved primary custody because she could provide the stable, consistent environment they needed. Richard's opening was simpler. He stated that I'd been an involved, dedicated father since the day my children were born, that I'd maintained active participation in their education and daily lives despite a demanding career, and that the evidence would show my ex-wife's claims were not just exaggerated but demonstrably false. Then came the testimony. Monica took the stand first. Patricia walked her through a narrative of our marriage, the divorce, the current custody arrangement. Monica portrayed herself as the primary caregiver who'd always been there for the kids while I was working. She talked about helping with homework, attending school events, communicating with teachers. Then Patricia asked the question I'd been waiting for. Can you describe your ex-husband's involvement in the children's education? Monica took a breath, looked at the judge, and lied. He's not very involved, honestly. I handle most of the school communication. I'm the one who emails the teachers, who attends parent-teacher conferences, who helps with homework at night. Ryan provides financially, which I appreciate, but he's not really engaged in the day-to-day of their school lives. He doesn't know their teachers' names. He doesn't know what they're studying. He's just not present in that way. I felt Richard's hand on my arm, keeping me calm. We'd expected this. She was committing perjury, and we had the evidence to prove it. Patricia continued. Has your ex-husband attended parent-teacher conferences? Monica shook her head. Not regularly, no. I usually go alone because he's working. I think he might have come to one or two over the years, but it's mostly been me. Another lie. I'd attended every single conference for the past 4 years, most of them without her, and homework help. Patricia asked. Monica sighed, playing the martyred parent perfectly. That's all me. Every night I sit with Nathan and Olivia and help them with their assignments. Ryan gets home late most nights, and when he is home, he's usually too tired to help. So it falls to me. Lies. All lies. And she was saying them under oath, to a judge, in a custody hearing that could determine my future with my children. Patricia wrapped up her direct examination. Monica had presented herself as the involved, dedicated parent while painting me as the distant, career-focused father who barely knew his own kids' teachers. It was a compelling narrative if you didn't have the facts. Richard stood for cross-examination. He was calm, methodical. He asked Monica about specific teachers. Can you tell me Nathan's 6th grade English teacher's name? Monica hesitated. Mrs. Peterson, I think close, Mrs. Patterson, and his math teacher, Mr. I'm not sure of his last name, Mr. Hernandez, and Olivia's 4th grade teacher, MS. Kim, good. Now you testified that you regularly email these teachers about the children's progress. Can you tell me approximately how many emails you've sent to Mrs. Patterson this school year? Monica shifted uncomfortably. I don't keep exact count, but regularly. More than 10? Richard asked. Yes, I'd say so, more than 20 probably. Your Honor, I'd like to enter defense exhibits A through D. These are complete email records from Nathan's and Olivia's teachers for the past 4 years, obtained through proper subpoena. Richard handed copies to the judge, to Patricia, and to the witness. Monica's face went pale as she flipped through the pages. Mrs. Thompson, can you point to any email in these records from your address to any of the children's teachers? Monica flipped through pages. Looked again. The courtroom was silent. These might not be complete. These are the complete records from the teachers' email accounts, verified and authenticated. There are over 200 emails in these exhibits. 147 from my client's email address. 0 from yours. Would you like to revise your testimony about who regularly communicates with the teachers? Patricia objected. Your Honor, my client may have communicated by phone or in person. The judge looked at Monica. Did you regularly communicate with your children's teachers by phone or in person? Monica's voice was quiet. Sometimes, yes. Richard wasn't done. You also testified that you attend parent-teacher conferences regularly while my client rarely attends. Is that correct? Yes. Your Honor, Defense Exhibit E. These are sign-in sheets from parent-teacher conferences for the past 4 years, also obtained by subpoena from the school district. Richard handed more papers forward. Mrs. Thompson, can you show the court where you signed in at any conference in the past 4 years? Monica stared at the papers. Her hands were shaking. I might have forgotten to sign in at every single conference for 4 years. Or is it possible that you didn't attend most of these conferences because my client was handling them? Monica didn't answer. She just sat there, the lies unraveling around her. Richard moved on to homework help. You testified that you help with homework every night while my client is too tired to assist. Correct? Yes. Your Honor, Defense Exhibit F. These are homework assignments, projects, and papers from Nathan and Olivia covering the past 4 years. Many include parent notes, parent signatures, or parent contributions. I'd ask the court to note that every single parent notation is in my client's handwriting or from my client's email address. He handed Nathan's solar system project report to Monica. Can you tell the court about this project? You testified you help with homework every night, so surely you remember this one. Monica stared at the paper. We did several projects. This one, the solar system model. Nathan got an A+. The teacher noted exceptional parent involvement. Tell us about building it. Monica's voice was barely audible. Ryan must have helped with that one. Must have. You don't remember? Silence. Your Honor, my client doesn't must have helped. He did help. Every night. With every assignment. He has the emails, the photos, the teacher feedback to prove it. My client has been the primary educational support for these children since they started school, and we have witnesses ready to testify to that fact. Richard sat down. Patricia tried redirect, attempting to rehabilitate Monica's testimony, but the damage was done. The judge's expression had shifted. He'd heard testimony under oath, and then he'd seen documentary evidence that directly contradicted that testimony. After Monica stepped down, Richard called his first witness. Mrs. Patterson, Nathan's English teacher, took the stand. She was a veteran educator, calm and professional. She testified that she'd been teaching for 23 years and that she remembered parent involvement clearly because it had such a direct impact on student success. Richard asked her about my involvement with Nathan's education. Mrs. Patterson smiled. Ryan Mitchell is one of the most involved parents I've worked with. He emails me regularly with questions about assignments, about Nathan's progress, about how he can support Nathan's reading at home. He attends every parent-teacher conference, usually alone. He clearly reads with Nathan because I can see the improvement in Nathan's reading comprehension and analytical skills. And the child's mother? Richard asked. I've met her at a few school events, but I don't recall ever receiving an email from her or having her attend a conference. In your professional opinion, based on your communications and interactions, which parent is more involved in Nathan's education? Without question, Mr. Mitchell. Patricia tried to cross-examine, suggesting that email communication didn't necessarily indicate real involvement, but Mrs. Patterson shut it down. In my experience, parents who email regularly are the ones doing the homework help at home, attending the conferences and staying engaged. The documentation backs up what I see in the students' work. Next was Mr. Hernandez, Nathan's math teacher. Same story. He had a binder of emails from me, questions about math concepts, requests for additional practice problems, thank you notes after conferences. He testified that I'd attended every conference for the past 2 years, that I clearly understood Nathan's challenges with fractions and algebra, and that he'd never met or corresponded with Monica. Then Ms. Kim, Olivia's current 4th-grade teacher. She was younger, enthusiastic, and clearly fond of both Olivia and our family. She testified about the dozens of emails we'd exchanged, about the science fair project I'd helped Olivia complete, about the reading challenges we'd worked through together. She said Olivia often talked about doing homework with her dad, about projects they worked on together, about how I helped her study for spelling tests. Tricia tried to suggest that this was recent behavior, that perhaps I'd only become involved after the divorce. Ms. Kim shook her head. I have emails from Mr. Mitchell from the first week of school. He introduced himself, asked about the curriculum, asked how he could support Olivia at home. That's not someone who just became involved. That's someone who's been doing this for years. The final witness was Mrs. Reynolds, Olivia's 3rd-grade teacher from the previous year. She brought her own binder. Over 50 emails from me about Olivia's math struggles, her spelling progress, her social development. Mrs. Reynolds testified that in her 18 years of teaching, she'd rarely seen a father as consistently involved as I was. She'd attended conferences with me, communicated with me weekly, and knew I was the primary educational support at home. Patricia asked if she'd ever met Monica. Once or twice at school events, yes, but never at a conference, never in an email, no. By the time the 4th teacher finished testifying, the courtroom atmosphere had completely shifted. What had started as Monica's narrative about being the devoted mother, and me being the absent father, had been thoroughly, methodically demolished by documentary evidence and professional testimony. Richard rested the defense. Patricia called a few rebuttal witnesses. Neighbors who testified that Monica was a good mother, Derek who talked about how caring she was with the kids, but none of it addressed the central issue. The evidence showed that I'd been the primary parent involved in my children's education, and Monica had lied about it under oath. In his closing argument, Richard was brief. Your Honor, this case is straightforward. The petitioner testified under oath that she was the parent involved in her children's education, while my client was absent and uninvolved. The documentary evidence and professional testimony from 4 teachers prove beyond any doubt that her testimony was false. My client has been the consistent, dedicated educational support for his children. He has maintained their homework routine, communicated with their teachers, attended their conferences, and stayed deeply involved in their academic lives. The petitioner's motion to reduce his custody should be denied. If anything, given her demonstrated willingness to provide false testimony in these proceedings, the court should question whether she can be trusted to co-parent effectively. The judge took off his glasses and looked at both parties. He didn't mince words. I've presided over many custody cases, and I've seen parents exaggerate their involvement or minimize the other parent's contributions. What I witnessed today went beyond exaggeration. Mrs. Thompson, you provided testimony under oath that was directly contradicted by extensive documentary evidence and multiple professional witnesses. You testified that you regularly communicated with your children's teachers when the record shows 0 such communications. You testified that you attended conferences when the sign-in sheets show otherwise. You testified that you provided nightly homework help when the evidence shows it was your ex-husband. Monica was crying silently. Patricia looked like she wanted to disappear. The judge continued. This court takes the issue of truthful testimony very seriously, particularly in custody matters where a child's welfare is at stake. Mr. Mitchell has demonstrated through clear and convincing evidence that he has been a highly involved, dedicated parent who has prioritized his children's education, despite a demanding career. Mrs. Thompson's motion to modify custody is denied. Furthermore, I'm ordering a review of the current arrangement because I'm concerned about a parent who would provide false testimony in an attempt to reduce the other parent's time with their children. He set a follow-up hearing for 30 days out to finalize the custody arrangement. We were dismissed. I walked out of that courtroom with Richard, my parents, following. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exhausted. Relieved, yes, but also sad that it had come to this. That the mother of my children had been willing to lie under oath to win a custody battle. That she'd tried to erase my involvement in our kids' lives with false testimony. Richard clapped me on the shoulder. You did well. You stayed calm, you had the documentation, and you let the evidence speak. That's how you win these cases. The follow-up hearing 30 days later was quick. The judge maintained the 50-50 custody split but added provisions about communication and co-parenting therapy. He also made it clear that any future modifications would be heavily scrutinized given what had transpired. Monica barely looked at me. Derek didn't come to the second hearing. Patricia filed the paperwork quickly and left. It was over. That was 6 months ago. The kids are doing well. They're adjusting to the reality that their parents won't be getting back together, but they know both of us love them. Nathan made honor roll last semester. Olivia's reading level jumped 2 grades. We still do homework together every night there with me. I still email their teachers regularly. I still attend every conference. Monica and I communicate about the kids when necessary, but it's formal now, usually through a co-parenting app the court recommended. The trust is gone. The ability to co-parent collaboratively is damaged. But we manage because we have to, for Nathan and Olivia. I learned several things from this experience. First, documentation matters. If I hadn't had those emails, those sign-in sheets, those teacher testimonies, the outcome could have been very different. Judges have limited time and information, and they often rely on testimony to make decisions. Having hard evidence made the difference. Second, being an involved parent isn't something you do because you might need to prove it someday. You do it because it's the right thing to do, because your kids deserve it, because their education and development matter. But in a world where custody battles can get ugly, where exes might lie or exaggerate, having that documentation provides protection. Third, staying calm and strategic beats emotional reactions. I wanted to yell when Monica lied on the stand. I wanted to interrupt, to call her out immediately. But Richard's hand on my arm, the plan we'd made, the methodical presentation of evidence, that's what won. Emotion would have hurt my case. Strategy won it. Monica tried to erase my involvement in our kids' lives. With her testimony, she tried to paint me as an absent father who didn't know his own children's teachers. She tried to win custody by lying under oath. Instead, 4 teachers brought 4 years of my emails to court. She had 0. The judge awarded me everything I'd asked for and denied her motion. Nathan and Olivia know their dad shows up. They know I help with homework, attend their events, communicate with their teachers. They know I'm present and involved. That matters more than any court ruling ever could. But on that day in court, when Mrs. Patterson opened that binder full of my emails, when the judge looked at Monica and saw the lies unravel, I was grateful for every email I'd sent, every conference I'd attended, every homework session at the kitchen table. Because it wasn't just about being a good father. It was about being able to prove it when I had to. The truth won. The documentation won. And I got to keep being the father I'd always been, present, involved, and there for my kids when they need me. Monica learned that lying under oath has consequences. Her attorney learned that cases built on false testimony crumble under scrutiny. And I learned that doing the right thing for years, even when no one's watching, pays off when someone tries to claim you didn't do it at all. Every night, I still sit at that kitchen table with Nathan and Olivia. We work through math problems and spelling words and reading comprehension. I still email their teachers. I still attend conferences, because that's what fathers do. And now nobody can ever claim otherwise.